Imagine expanding your lesson studio to 10 locations and then buying 20 more existing studios. Today I'm talking with Brady Davies, founder of One Music Schools, who's done just that. Brady breaks down what he looks for when buying a studio, how the acquisition process actually works, and changes they make once the sale is final. But this isn't about corporate takeovers erasing what made those studios special. Brady sees each school's legacy as one of their biggest assets. Now, most of us probably aren't planning to sell, but think about this. Brady's managing over 30 music schools right now. The systems and processes in place to keep everything running smoothly, those insights are pure gold for any of us trying to streamline our own operations. And if you are thinking of selling, solid systems are a must for potential buyers. Stay tuned. I want to tell you about my book, Complete Guitar Strumming. When I first started teaching guitar, I had no training at all. On my first day, the shop owner said, "Here's the room, your first student's in 10 minutes. And that was it. I went directly to using method books with students because I was looking for structure, not just in the way I was teaching students, but how to teach. But I felt the standard method books just didn't cut it, especially when it came to teaching rhythm and strumming. I ultimately developed my own exercises for students, but more importantly, a process to teach. Refining all of that over the years, I compiled it into Complete Guitar Strumming. It's a straightforward, scaffolded approach to teaching rhythm, strumming, and timing. The book is literally everything I wish I had when I started. For instructors, the book comes with a free instructor companion guide and training videos. Visit rockschoolproprietor.com/book for all the details or to order copies for your studio. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. My name is John Kazicki, and my co-host, Mandy York, could not be with us today. But joining me is I think, the co-owner of the Piano Place, which is a multi-location lesson studio in Utah. I believe 12 locations. Is that correct?
Yeah, with that brand, yes.
Yeah. And the founder of One Music Schools, which is a company that purchases music schools. And Brady Davies is joining us on the podcast. How are you, Brady?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
awesome
of course.
And be on here, so I appreciate it.
So a little clarification on that intro. Now, I know the Piano Place, my understanding is that was your wife's. That was kind of her brainchild, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So when the quick story with it was when I met my wife, and I'll preface this, I'm not a musician and I regret it every single day in this business. And, like every teacher I meet comes up to me and says, "So who did you study with?" And I'm like, "I didn't study with nobody." So, but my wife was an accomplished pianist. And when I met her, she had like 80 students and was teaching all hours of the day. And when we got married, she brought all those kids into our house, and I remember vividly coming home from, my background was more in real estate development and brokerage. And so I'd come home from my real estate job and warm up like some ramen noodles and like sit in my room by myself because I all the kids in my house all the time that weren't mine. And so I'd sit there by myself. But then we got pregnant with our first kid, and we were like, my wife's like, "I cannot keep this up." And so that led to her starting a brand called the Piano Place here in Utah and hiring teachers and kind of expanding from there. So,
okay, so by default, you were associated with the Piano Place, and I think the way that you told me previously was you kind of saw how your wife was doing all the administrative work and you were jumping in to help, and that's how she roped you into into working with her, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing commercial real estate brokerage a lot of the time at that point in my career. So at that time, I had just really like leased out my first spaces to some tenants. And I remember they were signing leases for like 5-10 years. And within like the first 6 months, the first 2 I had done, I think had gone out of business. And I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to lease a space. Like, this is so risky. I'll never do this. And to my wife's credit, she was way more entrepreneurial than I was and pushed super hard and said, "We're going to lease a space. Like, we're going to go build out a space. We're going to do this." We rolled all of our savings and some more, I think, into our first location. And the whole time I was kind of, dragging my feet. I was like, this is your thing, not mine. But eventually, when it came to bookkeeping and, setting up the spaces and, hanging all the pictures and putting the furniture together, she kind of had brought me in, and
Yeah.
I started to like it. I started to really see the vision of what she had, and it took me a few months to get there, but she brought me along for that journey. So
I love that. That's that scrappiness of the studio owners and the entrepreneurs that we see in our business. And with the piano place, is it 12 locations now?
I think we're at 13 with that
Oh,
brand.
wow.
13
Okay.
places, yeah.
And so along that path with the piano place studios, how long is that trajectory where you go from the instance that you just told me where you're opening up that first location to where the piano place is now with 13 locations?
Yeah, so it was a fun journey for sure. So our first location, I think, and we still have it today, was only 5 rooms, and we thought that'd be plenty. And I was terrified. I think our rent, I mean, it's a small kind of main street location down
Hmm.
where we live, and I'm just based out of just outside of Salt Lake City. So that space was 5 rooms. When I was terrified. I didn't think we'd be able to get enough teachers in there and enough students in there to justify I think our lease at the time was like $800 or $900. So I was really scared thinking
Yeah, yeah.
and we were blown away. Within 6 months, I think we were at around 250 students. So we went from 80 to like 250, like super fast. And
Right.
we were like running out of space in that building. And so we went ahead and we were just kind of out of desperation. We went and we leased some space in another building, like 3 buildings down from that one, different property, different ownership, but we called it an extension location. And it's funny to this day, we have those original 5, and that extension has really become the main one. It's like 17 rooms in that one now, but
Wow.
kept adding rooms to it and getting more suites in that building. So that's still how it's set up today. So we had that kind of was going on, and that was that was year 1.
Okay.
And really thought, we were like, hey, we have something here. This thing's really growing. It was kind of a fun revolutionary thing, at least in our area. Most of people's experience with music was going down to the old lady down the street who would slap
Hmm.
rulers. And so
Right.
our vision was to breathe new life in traditional music lessons, to make it something fun, to focus on the life lessons that come with music, and to really, I think, blow away our families and our students, not only in the pedagogy and the learning of music, but also in the performances, and making recitals and concerts a really big deal and a really fun experience that they could remember. So we kind of had those guiding principles there in the beginning. And then we kind of went to year 2 and decided to lease out another space in a town near us in Lehi, Utah.
Hmm.
Uh, this time that one was 12 rooms, and we built it out, and we were fortunate enough for that one as well to really take off. And so we kind of did that same trajectory. So we did that second, and then year 2 was that. Year 3, we did our 3rd location. And then we got, I'll fast forward all the way to year 8. I think we got to 9 locations. So we were opening, roughly about a location a year,
That's incredible.
that way, de novo sort of thing. So yeah, it was,
Okay.
it was crazy, and a lot of stress, lots of construction. We were fortunate enough, we worked with the same construction company that just kind of knew what we wanted, and towards the end there got really good at, I hardly had to talk to them. They just busted it out. So it was great.
I think that probably speaks to, I've got to imagine that like you just have systems in place that work for everything. I mean, if you're saying that your contractors who do the build out already know what they're going to do, well, that speaks to having a plan and a process and a system for that build out. I would assume that that also has to apply to hiring and admin staff and all the processes in these multiple locations. Is that correct?
Yeah. And, it comes from, almost out of necessity. And I'll admit that's never been my strong suit. I've tried to implement those, and I'm probably too ADD, and I love chasing the deals. I love finding the new spaces. I did a great job at that,
Yeah.
focusing on growth. But I have to tip my hat off a lot to our operations team. Currently it's two ladies who have been with us practically from the beginning,
Yeah.
who have been amazing at really instituting like a strong operations checklist. We from site selection all the way to grand opening, there's a checklist that they have for all of that. And we have, software we use that, task management software that helps us to organize that. And it flows. It works really, really well. So I have to give kudos to them for implementing
Yeah.
all of that and doing that. Yeah.
So taking you back to putting you in the mindset of year one,
Mm-hmm.
when you were opening that first location, was the plan at that point to have multiple locations, you think? Or was it really focused on just that one? And then as things sort of picked up, was there maybe a realization, a moment where you decided, you know what, we could make this repeatable. We could do these other locations. Obviously, you mentioned the necessity of outgrowing that first space. But, where was it that you decided we're going to open multiple locations of the piano place?
Yeah, for me, I probably came to that conclusion myself about 6 months into that first location when we were finding we needed a second one. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think my wife, on the other hand, she was like 50 from the get-go, keep
Oh my
going.
gosh. Yeah.
She was she was sold on it from the get-go, and later I was sold. She brought me along, and I was more sold on it as we went. So that was that became the intent. And what was cool, and I look back on those days because we're now, it's been 10 years since we opened that first location. What I loved about it is, I would honestly say probably the first 5 locations, we bet everything on it. I would have lost everything if one of those had gone down. And
Yeah.
but I also think back to that, I didn't really have a lot to lose either. And so, I tell entrepreneurs and people that all the time is, especially the younger you are, it's so much easier to risk everything. And
Sure.
it becomes harder and harder as things go further into the future. But, that was something that I was appreciative of. We were able to truly risk everything. We kept all of our equity in doing so, but there were some times where it got, a little scary, and things where we had risked a lot to get to that point. And it took a little bit of like getting to 5 or 6 locations to really then to see the dividends come from that. So,
Okay. So you mentioned your operations people who have everything in check. You mentioned the multiple locations. I want to swing back around to the vision of what you wanted to do, or I guess this may be like you speaking for your wife as kind of the instructor and like kind of the brains behind the creative side, updating the lesson experience from like the piano lessons that I had as a kid, which
yeah.
I went to the lady down the street. Um, so are we talking private lessons? Are we talking groups? You mentioned concerts. What is that vision, and how do you execute that?
Yeah. It comes down to a lot of little things. And over the years, I can say this, my vision for it and the ideas that I have are originally in the first couple of years were like 100% of what we were doing. And now it's probably 15%. It's been great to pick up ideas and practices from other schools and owners as we've gone
Yeah.
through this process. But, you know, we saw a huge need to make it something that was fun. And so all of our schools, even the ones that we acquire, for example, we put a store in them and do a money system and have our own currency.
So it's like kind of a reward system, like almost like a
Yeah,
Chuck E. Cheese style, like tickets
exactly.
and yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
totally. But we go all out on the prizes, and even like for the teens and adults, we have like Chick-fil-A gift cards and Starbucks gift cards and all sorts of fun stuff. So there's all sorts of rewards, and we're constantly, and you can get dollars for effort or for it's all based on the teacher's discretion, but dollars for effort or for, performing or doing something hard or coming back, from something difficult. So there's all sorts of things that they can get money for and
Gotcha.
spend it. So that was one of the core principles from the beginning was we wanted to make like a fun, incentivizing experience for
Hmm.
the kids. And so they see that when they walk in and they're usually pretty pumped from the beginning. So
Cool. And instrument wise, are we talking, I mean, what instruments do you teach at the piano place? Obviously piano, right?
yeah. Yeah. No,
What?
yeah, that we started with that name because we were like, we're only going to do piano, and then
Uh-huh.
that changed after a few weeks, but the name stuck, so
Yeah.
worked. But we teach piano, guitar, voice, violin, drums, cello, ukulele. I think that probably covers 98% of it. And we do band classes, so and that's a fun part, which I know you're really big into as well, John.
Oh yeah. Yep. Big into the bands. Yep.
Yes. And so we allow our private students to try out for different bands and ensembles and to play in those. And that was a huge, I think, at least for our area here in Utah was kind of a revolutionary thing. Uh,
Mhm.
so that, so we have that, we have those options. And then we have kind of like the pre-K kids, toddler classes.
Yeah. Those exploratory
Yeah.
classes. We're sort of getting a little bit tangential from my original focus with this, but I gotta ask with the band classes and the private lessons, I always like to ask about retention and if you see any sort of correlation between groups and that community compared to private lessons. If you see anything there, I mean, you've got a lot of data to look at, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I wish I could say it's X times more. I can't remember the exact numbers, but
Yeah.
if you were to ask me to roughly guess what it is, I think it's double the likelihood that you'll retain a student if they participate in a band than if they just do private lessons, for sure.
Yeah. I don't have hard numbers for my studio,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think at least twice as long, for
Yeah.
the retention. Okay, so that's all like kind of the setup based on the piano place, which is sort of where everything started. But now you also operate One Music Schools, and One Music Schools, your goal is acquiring other studios. Is that correct?
Yeah. So kind of what happened with us is so again, we've been open for 10 years. We got to year 8 and we had 9 piano place locations. And we knew there was some infill we wanted to do still within the state of Utah. And we felt like we were doing a great job at becoming kind of a household name in the state. However, we wanted to expand outside of Utah and to look at other options. And we kind of recognized at that time as well that to expand and to start a piano place in a different market, say we jump over to Los Angeles, that would be kind of starting from scratch a little bit where it'd be less of a known brand in a new
Right.
market. And at that time, we kind of saw the opportunity that, there was markets that had kind of done a little bit of what we had done within their local markets already. And so we kind of pivoted at that point to being more acquisition first minded as opposed to de novo, opening up new schools. And so that was year 8. Again, we're in year 10 now. And since that time, we've done 20 acquisitions in about 2 years. So
That's amazing. So yeah, in 10 years went from opening that scrappy little studio that transitioned out of your home into now owning 30 lesson studios.
yeah.
Let's dig into that. The acquisitions with the goal being, I mean, you kind of dropped it in the conversation earlier. Your wife said 50, right?
Yeah.
50 locations. I'll hold you to that. You've got a couple more years before you hit that, apparently. So what are when you're looking for studios to acquire now, are you looking for studios that are similar? Are you looking for studios that are in specific locations? What are some of the key points that you're looking at when you're considering purchasing a music school?
Yeah. I'd say first and foremost, we're looking for ones that are, standouts in the community. at the end of the day, we think that music lessons is all about community, families, and individual students, and they have to be hitting on all of those fronts, I think, to be a great fit for us. Obviously, there's a financial element to it as well. And so we're typically, our floor for like the smallest school we'd buy is typically like 200, 225 students, really pencils financially with it. We're looking for schools that are doing, from a hard financial number, it's like 150,000 plus in EBITDA. So kind of net profit after all your expenses there.
Yeah.
Uh, so we're kind of looking for schools like that. And then I think what makes a school, I often get asked, what makes a school valuable? What are you looking for that way? And truly, I think the biggest thing that makes any school valuable is to have some operating systems in place and that allows the owner to be absentee, because, we own schools now from Oregon all the way to Connecticut. So from Pacific to Atlantic there. And I obviously can't be at every location every single day.
Sure.
Making sure that, we have, that you have a manager or, a great admin who could step into a management role is crucial, I think, to be able to be a standout school that can potentially sell your school at some point. So.
Gotcha. All right. So that sort of highlights as you're sort of looking, right? And do you actively seek out these studios? I mean, do you do research? Do you have people coming to you saying, "Hey, we're thinking of selling"?
Yeah, it's been both for sure. I would say of our 20 or so, about 75% have come directly to us.
Okay.
25% we've probably knocked down their door and they've been willing to sell. So yeah, we
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Okay. And then assuming I mean, we won't get into the negotiations because I would imagine like that could be, and just about anything can be negotiated when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But once you do acquire a new school, what happens then? Do you rebrand? Do you keep it the same? Are there things that you change? Do you keep people on staff? That's a burning question in my mind because I think it could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's, when I was in my real estate job, for example, there was a time where we got acquired, and I remember being in the shoes of that job as an employee, or I guess contractor of the company, but same thing, and being like, what does this mean? And being apprehensive. And I think everyone feels that way if they're being acquired by another company. Is, what's next? What's going to happen to me? Are these guys going to come in here and just like clean house? And that's the thing that we try to lead with. So as we're getting close to closing, we have a meeting with all of the teachers of the school that we're buying. We do a Zoom call, and our number one goal is to assure them that they are the most valuable asset of this entire sale, and that there's nothing changing in that regard. And truly that is the case. If anything, we try to add on to their experience with it. So usually, these teachers don't have benefits. They're not receiving, they're not able to tap into that with a single location. I know certainly for me, it took us maybe like 7 or 8 locations to be able to afford benefits for our teachers.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're able to give them benefits, and usually that's a huge up. We don't change their pay rates. We do everything we can to keep the staff in place. And so from that aspect, nothing changes. We only hope to enhance their experience. What we do, there's some things we change from a marketing standpoint, where we'll upgrade the website a little bit. We usually update their lesson management software. We'll switch them to another one that we all use. And then when it comes to their name, we don't change it. A lot of these schools that we've acquired, I have one, for example, it's called the Gwinnett School of Music in kind of outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Open now for 42 years.
Oh my gosh.
4 locations. They're all located like on Main and Main of all of those, the towns that they're in. And Gwinnett School of Music is literally named after the county that they're in. And so I'm like, why would I change any of this? It's
Right.
It's been for a long time. Why would I put a different stamp on there? And so that's kind of been our goal is, we, again, believing again in the power of a local community music school has been our goal to keep it the same. Now, what we try to do is we try to offload and to kind of like, what's the word? Enhance the back end operations of the schools so that they can operate. Yeah,
Streamline's the word you're looking for, Brady.
I'm thinking of like supercharging them.
Yeah.
We want them to feel like they have the back end of a large organization, which they do. But on the front end to the customers, we try to represent and give the same care towards our customers as if they are a local community school. So
I think I mean, I think that would be reassuring for someone in that position that they have decided to sell,
mhm.
that you do recognize that the asset is longevity and the staff that's already there and invested in it. I think that's really smart. And what you come to the table with then is being able to offer more, like the benefits, because I mean, I would imagine you've got to have hundreds on your staff at this point, right?
Yeah, I think we're at 425 or so right now.
Okay. And I mean, maybe a hard question to answer, but of those 425 ish, like what percentage are I mean, the greatest percentage I'm assuming is going to be in your instructors. And then you've got admins and management for all those locations. And then I hate to use the word Brady, but corporate, right?
Yeah, we hate that word too. So
But yeah, having that support, I think there's just a little bit more security in knowing that, okay, yes, there's a bigger organization behind this. And if you're trying to maintain the integrity of the legacy of that music school, it feels more like you're gaining rather than you're losing, right?
yeah,
Like, as opposed to a company that comes in and says, okay, well, now you're going to wear these t-shirts or these polo shirts, and this is how we do this. And like, yeah, you did it like this before, but this is how we do it because these are our systems. And you mentioned a little bit of that with the software, but it does sound like you're sort of focused on maintaining the integrity of the legacy of each of those locations.
yeah. There's schools that do, for example, they'll have a different concert or recital or whatever schedule than Piano Place does, for example, and we allow them to continue to do that. So if there's things, and if they do some group classes, slightly different than our other schools, we allow them to continue to do that as well. We want, we don't touch at all how the teachers teach, and we allow them kind of that freedom to continue to do what they're doing. So that's always been a big goal of ours.
Okay. So then, I mean, that kind of leads me to wonder about, I mean, if you've got the instructors sort of doing what they've been doing, are there any specific curriculums that you bring in and you suggest or you impose?
Yeah, we don't. To make it simple, we don't at all. We allow them to, again, do. They got in that position for a reason. They're doing something right, obviously. I heard this stat the other day. I think 7% of small businesses actually have the opportunity to sell their business.
Yeah,
And so to be in that elite category, I think it shows that they're doing something right. So we don't touch that. Now we're Hal Leonard distributors, and anything in that library, we're like, have at it.
sure.
We charge the students for the books, and we'll do things that way. And so we allow the teachers to still tailor that curriculum however they want. I will say we have a proprietary app that we developed in-house.
Hmm.
This might be the one change we do from a teacher standpoint into how they teach, but I think it only enhances what they're already doing. But it's more of it's a goal setting, progress reporting app that celebrates kind of the milestones that students hit along the way in their musical journey. And it's cool
Yeah.
when they update it, it sends the parent a super nice data rich report showing where their students at. And so
That's primarily for students and parents.
correct. Yep.
Okay. And then is that tied to that reward system that you mentioned at the piano place?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just launched that, within the last couple of months here, and it's been awesome. So it's
Cool.
cool. thing. And the teachers, at first there was some apprehension, like, hey, I'm going to be updating this. We have them update it once a month, but I think it's only like driven home to the students and the parents, like, hey, progress is happening with the student. You should be happy about it. So
yeah. Nice, nice. And that reward system, is that something that you introduce into all of the locations? Because I know reward systems aren't something like, I don't do a reward system at my studio, and I
yeah,
know not all studios do that. Some of them do, but with your new acquisitions, the new locations, do you implement that?
we do. That is one thing we do implement that I think is a little bit of a change. But to be honest, I've never, you say that, and I forget that we do that because I've never heard once any, pushback from anyone about doing that. I think they've always been excited about it. The teachers have. So,
Yeah, very cool.
that
Very
or they're all
cool.
lying to me. So, so,
Okay, so question for you, since Brady, you have a lot of interactions with music school owners, and I'm assuming some of those interactions don't result in a sale or any sort of negotiations. But with your experience, from your observations, what are maybe one or two things you would suggest sort of industry wide to music school owners to maybe encourage them to up their game? Or because, again, going back to that original vision for the piano place, clearly you saw, okay, this is what we don't want to do.
yeah.
This is the direction we do want to go. Are there any bits of advice for studio owners that you might offer?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think I'll go back to the point. The number one thing is removing yourself from the business to a certain degree. Now, if you're going to always be involved in some form or fashion, but I've talked to studio owners, for example, where let's say it's a 200-person studio, but the owner teaches 80 of the students and wants
Yeah,
to exit. That's really hard to underwrite that and to say, all 80 of these students are going to stay, and you're getting 100% of the profit from that, but now I have to pay a teacher to step into your shoes. So
right.
that'd be my number one tip. The number two I would say is, remove any, this was a painful thing we had to go through a few years ago, but you kind of feel isolated in a bubble when you start your school. You really don't. I still think to this day there could be a lot more done to give people more resources and best practices and things, but think
Mhm.
about some of those processes that you have that are just nagging you and super annoying and hard to do, or something that worked and there was a reason for it years ago. There's no longer a reason for it now. Every business has them. I mean, we still have them within our company. Get rid of those and simplify them. I can't emphasize that enough. The simpler, and the parents like it too. The simpler your company is, the simpler your policies are, the
Yeah.
better. So those would kind of be my main two pieces of advice.
What would be, to push a little bit on that, when you say simplify, does anything specific come to mind?
Yeah, I'll say ones for us that
Okay.
changed our life, and I see it still with a lot of other schools. Taking checks and cash and having to, I met an owner who like deposits like 300 checks a week and is
Oh,
chasing it.
yeah.
Just get auto pay, get, on a credit card system. It makes it makes your school more valuable. It makes, all of that makes it so much easier. In the beginning for us, from a billing standpoint, we used to charge based on how many lessons someone took in a month,
Yep.
as opposed to like a flat rate. And
Mhm.
we always had issues with that where, and I know there's probably schools on listening to this who charge that way and they're like, this is
Sure.
for us. And it might work. My experience has been more often than not that billing that way causes confusion for the parents. And they're like, why am I paying extra this month when I paid X last month?
I agree.
And then often we were, I remember back then it'd be like the last week of the month and we're like, okay, we got to hurry and update, you know, XYZ on the invoices, go through your list of 600 students and make sure that, the Monday ones get charged this or that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things like that I think are still present. that you don't need to do. I think it's easier in that case, bill flat rate, monthly and increase your price a little bit to cover what you got before, and so things like that. And then there's a lot. I'll mention one other thing. There's sometimes people will have really weird pay structures with admin or teachers that or their admin have really weird hours. Just little things like that. Like how could I simplify this? And I think even if you aren't selling, I think people are always asking, business owners, what's your exit strategy? How long till you exit the business? And you might not know that, and that's okay. But I think you should always operate in a way that I could exit tomorrow if I wanted to,
I love that.
That's the constant goal and the constant focus of how could I give this to some guy on the street who never run a music school? How could I make this as simple as possible for someone to step into? So
I think that's great advice. I heard a quote earlier this week, and to kind of get into the mind of, I think, some of us, the studio owners, the quote was something to the effect of, we're more afraid of what we have to lose if we change than what we potentially could gain.
Yeah.
If we do change, like it's easier to see what we could lose from a change versus what we could gain from the unknown. So, yeah.
I'll say this, it was, I think 3 years ago, just as just a fun example with that, because I remember this stat, but we switched from variable billing to flat rate month to month. And I remember we measured it, 3 months removed after making that change. And it was funny to see our call rate. So the people calling in, our customer care lines and stuff, dropped by like 28%. It was something like that, the high 20s. And we're getting less calls, and our retention had gone up like half a point. And, so it just makes it simpler, just things like that, and there's tons of awesome, cool, simple changes that you can make. And it's always, I find I'll go on vacation, for example, and I'll sit back and I'll think about some of these things, like being removed from the business. And I come back and I'm like, yeah, let's simplify that. Like that should be way easier than how we make it, So that's my advice.
That's fantastic, Brady. Well, so I think we'll wrap this one up. This has been fantastic. Now, Brady, if any listeners are thinking like, man, maybe I should contact Brady and open up a discussion about selling my studio, where should they contact you? Where should they look?
Yeah. We have a contact form and a free ebook as well, kind of a guide to preparing to sell your school for those who are even just interested. But there's also a contact form on there if you are interested in having a direct discussion with either myself or a member of our team.
Okay.
Our website is onemusicschools.com. So one spelled out, O-N-E.
We will put that in the show notes. And Brady Davies, thank you for joining me on this episode. It's been really enlightening and appreciate speaking with you.
Hey, thanks a ton, John. Super fun to meet you and to be on here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again to Brady Davies for joining me today. You can connect with Brady via onemusicschools.com, where you can also find his ebook, 6 Stages to Selling Your Music School. If you have topic suggestions or questions, please contact us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. We always love to hear from you. We put together some free resources for teachers and studio owners at rockschoolproprietor.com. Also, connect with me on social media. I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram and John Kazicki on both LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. If you enjoyed the show and gained insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward, and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.